Controversy Corner. Controversy Corner is a section of Logosophia magazine where people of different faith traditions discuss controversial topics in a succinct manner. If you would like to submit a topic for discussion, please let us know. Don't see your denomination represented? Help us fix that. We're always looking for new writers. Disagree with a representative of your denomination? Write in and tell us why in a respectful manner, and we'll publish it in our next magazine under Letters to the Editor. For these and any other questions, comments, or suggestions, email us at editors.logosophia@gmail.com. Controversy Corner. How does your denomination define concupiscence, and how does it relate to original sin? Confessional Lutheran, represented by Jordan Christensen, aka J.C. Ellis. Read by Sarah Levesque. The second article of the Augsburg Confession, the chief confessional document of the Lutheran Church, states, quote, "Also they, i.e. the Lutheran Church, teach that since the fall of Adam, all men begotten in the natural way are born with sin, that is, without the fear of God, without trusting God, and with concupiscence, and that this disease, or vice of origin, is truly sin, even now condemning and bringing eternal death upon those not born again through baptism and the Holy Ghost. They condemn the Pelagians and others who deny that original depravity is sin, and who, to obscure the glory of Christ's merit and benefits, argue that man can be justified before God by his own strength and reason." End quote. The desire to sin, that is, concupiscence, is sin itself. For example, look at the commandment, "Thou shalt not covet." Noah Webster, in his 1828 dictionary, defines covet in this context, quote, "to desire inordinately, to desire that which it is unlawful to obtain or possess, in a bad sense." End quote. To covet, then, can be defined as a desire to steal. If it is a sin to desire to steal, how then is it not a sin to desire to murder, etc.? Additionally, it is important to note that to be tempted in a biblical sense is not to feel a desire to sin, but rather to be tested. As the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod states, quote, "Temptation is the act of putting a quality of man to the test, specifically his life with and toward God." End quote. This is important to note because we strongly asseverate that Christ was, is, and ever shall be without sin, and he, whilst upon this earth before his ascent into heaven, was tempted as stated in the Epistle to the Hebrews, chapter 4.
Presbyterian Church in America, represented by Joshua David Ling. The word concupiscence is not widely used in Presbyterian circles, but the concept is definitely one that gets bandied about by all sides, conservative and liberal. Going back to Augustine, who is quoted by many Presbyterians, regarding the physical urges that God grants to us and their relation to sin. During the Reformation, there were major advancements in this area toward a healthy thanksgiving for the natural appetites of man, especially among the Puritans. The phrase puritanical is somewhat of a misnomer in this way. To really go into this fully, I am going to need to do an episode on this topic on my podcast, Poets at War. Stay tuned.
Roman Catholic, represented by Sarah Levesque. The Catechism of the Catholic Church states, "Etymologically, concupiscence can refer to any intense form of human desire. Christian theology has given it a particular meaning, the movement of the sensitive appetite contrary to the operation of the human reason. The Apostle St. Paul identifies it with the rebellion of the flesh against the spirit. Concupiscence stems from the disobedience of the first sin. It unsettles man's moral faculties and, without being in itself an offense, inclines man to commit sins." Catechism of the Catholic Church 2515. Thus, the Catholic Church teaches that concupiscence, man's tendency towards sin, is one of the effects of original sin. Original sin itself is the deprivation of original holiness and justice. And the Catechism goes on to state that human nature has not been totally corrupted. It is wounded in the natural powers proper to it, subject to ignorance, suffering, and the dominion of death, and inclined to sin. an inclination to evil that is called concupiscence. Baptism, by imparting the life of Christ's grace, erases original sin and turns a man back toward God, but the consequences for nature, weakened and inclined to evil, persist in man and summon him to spiritual battle. Catechism of the Catholic Church, 405. Yet while baptism erases original sin and turns a man back towards God, the effects, including concupiscence, remain.